Russell Room Advanced Choreo session, and we'll begin now. We'd like to welcome all of you this morning. We'd like to introduce the presenters to you and get things rolling. We first and foremost appreciate the fact that any of you are functioning to the extent of being capable to find this room this early in the morning. We are glad you are here. It's a little early for questions, Harold. Let us get started, and then we'll... Oh, I see.
I got to give it
yes.
Big J. Yeah, huge J.
Let me introduce to you, on my left, Redden Uebelacker from Peterborough, Ontario, Canada. To Ann's left, you are right. I get that down pat, right? First thing this morning, being advanced callers. We have Mr. Dave Kenney from Tucson, Arizona. Now he won't stand. Okay. And, of course, my name's John Marshall, and I'm from Redden, Virginia. We have an hour to work with this morning. We'd like to get as much out of it as we can. We're going to hit a couple of different areas that affect advanced level choreography in different formats, some of the things that we're seeing going around. Tim, why don't you bring us all some of that coffee? We'd appreciate it more than you can imagine.
Is it out?
Okay. Now, the fact that there's this many of you is encouraging. I would tell you just for our own reference, real quick, that they were not going to have any interest session for advanced this go around. And I was not real excited about that. I didn't care if there were only 3 of you here this morning. I just kind of felt like somebody ought to carry on for something, for that part of the activity, that they didn't feel there were enough. There was not enough of you. There was not enough percentage of the attendees to make it worthwhile. Well, we're still a viable part of the activity. You know, we're working at it all around the country. All of us that are here are interested in it, and that's part of why we're here. So I made a little bit of an issue, and they came through and said, okay, fine, but it's got to be 7 in the morning. There's no other time. I said, I'll get back to you. No, we went ahead and planned it. And again, we are glad you're here. We're going to start off and let Mr. Kenney open up this morning. And if we can get him cranked up and all the way up to the microphone, Dave will be glad to make a little presentation for you first. And then we'll have Ann, and then what time's left will be mine. God bless you, Bill Hay. We appreciate it.
Over and over again. Over and over again. First thing that I'd like to just ask and talk about and put out for some thought is kind of a thought is, where is advanced dancing going with CALLERLAB's kind of approval and acceptance of a soft advanced dance? Problems that I encounter are dancers that have limited exposure, I'll use that terminology, to advanced dancing that will sign up to a weekend. And unbeknownst, they have no way of knowing really about what a level is, at least as far as the hardness of the choreography. Coming and having a difficult time and ending up asking for their money back, or just dancing and being uncomfortable all the weekend, because they're not familiar with the way the choreography is put together. I think in several instances this last year, why people have gotten upset, had problems, and you can't blame the dancers. They don't know. They're doing the best they can with the learning procedures and exposures that they've had. And I don't know if what kind of a monster that we've kind of got created, or in the beginning stages of it, is advanced dancing just going to become a soft extension of mainstream? That's kind of something I think we all need to start to think about, because down the road, there's a lot of dancers being exposed to advanced dancing, going through the world, learning all the calls. Whether they're from one position or a variety of positions, we all still know that still isn't enough for a hard advanced dance where a lot of positioning is used. And this is just kind of something I wanted to throw out this morning and let people think about it, mull over it. If you've got any questions or thoughts on it, or anything that you guys have encountered yourself. But I think we should start to keep track of this, and every year talk about it, or correspond about it too. We have dancers that are learning from callers that are new to the field, and bless your hearts, you're doing the best you can, but if your exposure is limited, then the dancers only get what you have to offer as far as teaching and calling calls from different, one position, 2 positions, or everything that you know, but maybe there's a whole lot of other ways to do the calls. And I know this is really tough as far as trying to put stuff together different. Does anybody have any questions or things that they would like to add to that, or experiences that they've had? Gee, thanks. Bill?
Probably the biggest problem that I've encountered when I have gone to...
Yeah, put it all on tape. You need to go up to the mic. Have him come up.
Can you use the mic up here? Yeah, for the tape.
Yeah, I think the biggest problem that I have encountered, and I travel around, and I was in your area first of the year, and we did a doubleheader, and I noticed that the level before time, the degree of difficulty that I could do, was way down here, and I'm not saying it's just because you're in that area, but all of a sudden, it's up here. It's a lot easier, and I think a lot of it is just, it's time.
Yeah.
It's exposure. The dancers need the floor time. I think a lot of times... I know I work for one club, and they want a complete A1, A2 program in 1 year, and it can't be done.
It can't be done.
It can't be done.
No way.
And I've got a group right now in one area. We've been dancing A1 for a year, and they're still not ready to go to a weekend.
Yeah, yeah.
And I told them, I said, if it's going to be soft, I said, you walk in and see what the guy's doing first, and if you think you can handle it, get your square together back here. Don't start milling around unless you really feel comfortable. I've had people come and say, are these guys going to be ready for A2 by October? No way. There is no way. I think the other problem that we have is that the note services that come out, there's only one really good set of notes that really spotlight advanced, and that's news and notes. And I think there's a need for more advanced choreography in the note services that we get.
Which note service was that?
News and notes.
News and notes. Okay. You newsy guys, think about that. How about a good stiff newsletter for advanced and challenge? Let's make it advanced, because that's where the problems are showing up first. Let's make it for advanced. You guys think about that. Maybe there's a good market for that, with the emphasis on advanced calls. Well, how can we put these calls together? Where can you do AC-deucing besides ocean waves and two-phase lines? Okay, let's put these things out and let everybody get informed with these kind of things. And say, let's do AC-deucing one more time. But we always have new guys getting into this thing, and the interest is there. And the dancers are the ones that come out hurting on the bottom end. Am I out of time? No? Okay.
Do you have anything more worthwhile to say?
Just about done. But as Bill said, that dancers can't expect to be advanced dancers within a year. Maybe not even A1 dancers within a year. Certainly at a soft level, they probably could. I think we need to inform the dancers as we're teaching them where they stand. When a new group finishes, say, now you've got it all. It's just going to be a matter of floor time. Don't get disappointed. If you go out and you have trouble to another caller, it's just like when you finish mainstream. You're going to sit there and struggle at mainstream until after you've danced for a few years at mainstream. Every time you dance to a new caller, he's going to do something different. And it kind of goes the same way right on down the line, whether it's plus or whether it gets into advanced and challenge. But I think we need to inform the dancers as we go along and say, guys, I've shown you everything I can do. Just get out and get floor time, practice on that, and dance to all the callers that you can. I guess that's it.
Thank you, Dave.
Okay. Thank you, Bill.
On that same line, I'd like to just interject one thing. We all, obviously, want as many possible dancers as we can get. It's a natural, instinctive thing. There's nothing wrong with that. However, I don't feel that we should automatically assume that advanced level dancing is for everyone, and I think it is incumbent upon those of you who are calling and teaching this level to set some kind of a standard. Those of us who've been in advanced level calling for some years, like back before there were programs, lists, levels, whatever term you want to apply to it, have seen a tremendous change, and there's been a watering, if you will, in terms of complexity that is acceptable to the general advanced level floors around the country. I think that is inevitable when you talk about the tremendous growth and growth rate that we have had, not only in dancers, but callers, because so many get in. And a lot of them are chasing from a standpoint of peer pressure, from their friends, also from other callers. I'm afraid that it sometimes becomes a stigma that if you are only a mainstream or only a plus caller, that you are not offering enough, or you are a second-class caller, right? And that situation is ridiculous, right? The quality of your calling has nothing to do with your level of calling, right? They're two different things. And we need to set some standards for the dancers. You need to act in a leadership capacity of saying, okay, this is what we're going to do, and we are setting standards. Now, every area is different in terms of whether you can do A1 in 1 year or a year and a half or 2 or 6 months. It depends on the preparation. Many of us are not fortunate enough to have a full program where nobody comes to my advanced until they've been through my beginners and my mainstream and my plus, and they know how I think and how I function, and boy, they're ready. You know, when they're ready, I know they're ready, and they can come right in, and in less than a year, we've got A1 dancers. Because most of us are the exception to the rule by calling advanced in our particular community in many cases. In some cases, we're outcasts because of calling advanced level in our community. So we don't get only the dancers that have come through our program. We do at times get others, right? And we may find ourselves having to go back and teach for them. And I think that situation is such that you have to be aware of it, and don't be afraid to set some standards, because advanced level is exactly what it says. It is not for absolutely everybody. You know, if you will, you have different leagues in softball or bowling or whatever. Particularly, you see it in sports, that we have this league for the people of this group, whether it be age and or abilities and so on, and you break it through. Advanced level, it's just part of the pyramid. The higher you go, the fewer dancers you have that have the time to do it with the frequency that it requires to become, proficient. Right? And then there's an interest factor. Do they want to spend that much time? Do they have the fever, if you will? Those things make a difference into how competent they can become. Right? If they feel that they want to come out and learn to dance advanced and dance advanced once or twice a month at most, and the rest of the time they're on vacation or they're traveling or their work prohibits it, I don't think they're going to become proficient advanced dancers, and maybe advanced level is not the community for them. And I don't believe, personally, I do not believe that we should change advanced level and what it is and what it is meant, right, to accommodate the people who want to do this on an occasional, once in a while, wouldn't it be nice to go dance an advanced dance once a month type basis. That's not what advanced level is or ever was. And we should not, in terms of chasing numbers of people, change the nature of the activity. It offers another part of the community. And also the reason we say it's not for everyone is because, if you are a responsible advanced level caller, you don't want people coming in before they are ready to frustrate you, to frustrate the other dancers, and to frustrate themselves. And they will do just that. So you need a very strong leadership responsibility ties in with calling advanced level, in my opinion. Because you need to set some prerequisites. You need to be able to put a situation there in front of the dancers that say, these are things that may be expected of you. Greater frequency. Perhaps studying the rules, the definitions a little closer. And recognize that most of the people that come into this want more. They are desirous of more, and they are willing, and they are smart. Don't underestimate the dancer. Every once in a while you'll see an article comes up and say, well, my dancers don't want to do all position, right? But they like to do some of the advanced calls. Well, that's your option in your closed club, if you will, but don't call it advanced. It's not advanced. It's not what it was ever designed to be. It's not whatever it has been, and I see a change, and I think that's part of what Dave is talking about. He has seen this change taking place, and it's something that we don't think is necessarily for the good of the dancers in the activity. I mean, obviously, the more numbers we get, quote, the more successful we are. I'm not sure that's necessarily true in terms of the service that we're providing to square dancing. And we'll move off of that general topic. Yep, we have a couple questions. Let's go here and then Bill.
Hi, I'm Phil Smith from Sacramento. Could you explain the definition of what A1 used to be and the change of where it is now?
I'll speak to that as advanced as a whole, yeah, not A1 separately.
Okay.
All right. When advanced level was started, and I got involved in it about 9 years ago now, I guess, there were no lists, there were no programs, or no levels. It was whatever a select few were doing around the country. Names like Lee Copman and Keith Gully, and, Ross came kind of after. Ed Foote has been involved in Challenge for a long, long time. But they recognized the need, and they also had a particular mental bent, if you will, to be able to look at and see things that a lot of the other callers had not ever seen before. They saw it on different planes and different actions taking place and different potentials and possibilities, and they started to explore those, and it opened up a whole new world. And they started to perceive that there were people interested in that. people who would go out and dance it and be fascinated by it. And it has, without a doubt, become more and more choreographically sophisticated over the years. Perhaps even more than is good for square dancing on the whole, but there it is, and you cannot erase it. You've started it, you've unleashed it, if you will, and you have all the new minds coming in, seeing different things in different ways and different ideas, and that's very exciting, and it's very dynamic, and I think the growth in advanced level points to that. But it was intended to be more difficult. It was intended to reach further. It was intended to find the dancer who was bored with quality mainstream plus, which we only had as club level then, right? That didn't get enough, who traveled around, who wanted more, who was seeking for it, could handle it. And those people were being catered to. And we found out, gee, there's an awful lot of real bright people out there that can do more and want more. And that's what it became. And you needed lessons. You didn't just walk in and say, here's another group that's just a little bit faster. Here's a group that does just a couple more calls. Right? And as such, when CALLERLAB was organized and then stepped in and said, all right, now, we need to get a handle on this, and the callers got together who were doing advanced, and of course they were growing constantly even then, and they developed this list. They'd had to put some kind of containment on it because it was just overwhelming. If you travel around and you find old clubs that have been dancing who would take advanced call, quote, advanced call names for their clubs, you'll find an awful lot of those calls are no longer advanced calls. My A2 club is called Phantom 8s. Right? But they've been around a long time, and we, in our area, Phantoms and Plenties and all these C1 and C2 ideas were used at advanced because it was whoever could. Well, then we started to put some guidelines on it and limit it down to within certain areas, but always positional dancing has been a major part of advanced. It is what advanced dancing is about, not just calls. It begins to get into the realm of not only positional dancing, but concepts. The first type of concept I think dancers come in contact with in the plus field, for example, would be diamonds as a concept, because it's a different type formation that they're functioning within and doing certain diamond things, and then we expand upon it from there. Concepts are harder than calls, generally, to learn. But we're looking at dancers that we're saying to you, we expect you to be able to not only learn a call, right, but also learn different applications and apply it and see. We want the dancers to be able to see and be aware of different formations in the square and react to them instead of the by rote same number one position time after time after time. And that's a lot of what they want. And that's the change. And what's happening now, we're seeing less and less positioning. And part of that, I lay right at the laps of ourselves, the callers. We haven't done enough homework. We haven't done enough research, whether it be tapes or, as you say, there's one of the gentlemen mentioned, there's a lack, and some of the note services don't provide enough, we feel. So those are areas, though, that you go after what you can get that way. You talk to other callers, and you sit down and you spend a tremendous amount of time with your checkers, writing and looking for ideas. Right? That has to be done, and if it's not being done, then the callers ourselves are going to water more and more. The dancers say, hey, we went right through this A1 and A2, one way. And that's how their caller calls it to them. That's a disservice to what advanced level is. And it takes longer and it's harder, and you may have fewer dancers who are doing it the other way, but if those people don't have that kind of interest and dedication, I feel that they should become tremendous quality plus dancers. And this runs all the way down the line, by the way. I feel that plus is much softer than it was or should be, and so on. I think they're using a lot fewer calls in those levels. And maybe this is all just a leveling out process that we're going through, but I know a lot of the callers are concerned with what they've seen. We accept a certain amount of it just because of the magnitude, the growth. I think that has to be expected. But there's times when the callers have to play catch-up. Now it's time for us to start stepping in and saying, let us share this idea with you. Let's talk about that idea. Because it keeps the dancers, that's another thing about advanced and having that positional world to deal with in. It keeps the dancers in a learning mode. And dancers like that because it gives them a sense of accomplishment, achievement, a sense of polish. Right? And they feel more competent when they walk away, having been successful at the end of the night, having accomplished something else. Oh, that was neat, that was different. We like that. And it keeps a very high interest level as a result. But it takes a lot of work on the part of the callers. Okay, if we can, I'd like to move on, and we'll ask Redden Uebelacker to address us.
Where's Bill?
I'm sorry, Bill.
Well, I was just going to say, in particular, I think in connection with his comment that, Mike, come on, you guys. There's no way that you can't hear me.
Yes, but the tape can't.
The tape can.
Are we getting taped?
Yes, he can tape, Joe.
7 in the morning.
Now he'll get on the mic. He knows it's going to be taped. He will now get on the mic.
I have nothing more to say. I think that maybe the thrust of your question and the thing that I was going to comment on is that with the creation of the A1 level, for better or worse, as a destination level, I think that has definitely softened the advanced picture, because now there are clubs. I know there are clubs in our area that have A1 as a destination level, and they are definitely softer than a full advanced club. Not just in the number of calls, but in the positioning, everything else related to what we know as advanced. And that's a fact of life, whether or not it's appropriate or whatever you might say, depending on your point of view. You have to confront the fact, I think, that it's a fact of life. And there are people doing it, and there are people dancing it, and there are people liking it, I presume. They're doing it, so I presume they like it. And a lot of these operations are pretty successful. So I think that's a fact of life, and I think it probably making the A1 destination level had a lot to do with that.
It may have.
That's my comment on that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Let's go on. Think of something.
Okay. It's obvious that we all have the same idea in mind here. There is a varying level of the ability of the advanced dancer. I think we have a lot to blame on ourselves. Personally, I don't fault the note services whatsoever. If we don't go out and dance the stuff ourselves, the note services, all the best ones in the world, won't help us. It's just a little bit of it's a crutch. We can go and read these things and find out about them from there, but we have to expand on that. So I'll get back to that in a minute anyway. I think there's a lot of reasons why the dancer's ability varies. First of all, the teaching ability of the callers also varies. If you have done absolutely no advanced calling or dancing whatsoever, of course your program is going to be totally different than somebody, say, who is perhaps a challenge caller or dancer that's gone into this. They see things differently. That's why we have to go out and dance to all the different callers, or at least subscribe to perhaps a tape service that we can listen to, pick up different ideas from. Another thing, too, the way the calling styles vary. Some people stack calls a little more than others. Again, according to the ability of the dancer. If you have a weak floor, or, quote, soft, then your judgment has to be totally different. You can't go putting 4 or 5 advanced calls on top of each other and expect these people to breeze through it. They're going to be shaky, even the best floor is. So judgment on your part in a dance has a lot to do with the reaction from the floor, the ability of the floor, also the level of the acceptance of dancers by the club or the caller. You have closed clubs, which, okay, if you're in the area, I suppose, and you only have a couple of squares of people that can handle this stuff, and you want to move them up, and you don't want to keep bringing in the once-a-month dancer, I suppose a closed club has its place. Personally, I object to them. I think anybody that has the desire and the ability should be allowed in to dance these levels. Another thing, too, if you dance by rote, or do you dance by rule? By rote, I mean, you were originally taught that AC-doocy, girls were in the middle, you did a trade. If you put the girls on the ends, these people are going to be totally lost. And you have to go into the area, talk to the caller who is in that area teaching them. Have you taught all position? Have you taught them by definition? Or did they just know how to do the call and where to get from here to there? And you have to adjust your program when you're calling to them, to an out-of-town club, to suit the people. A solution for these things, I think, first, maybe the caller took the first tip to utilize the whole floor and say, well, okay, I know these people dance by rule, so I can get up there and start out with a soft advance, see how they handle it. If they're very good on positioning, then you go from there. Also, if they dance by rote, obviously they're going to need a lot more help if you're going to vary the program. You're going to have to cue heavier, you're going to have to wait for them. Your timing suffers, but it's better to have your timing suffer than the floor. And besides that, they don't hire you back if you mess the floor up. There's three very important things: choreography, your music selection, and your delivery. You can have the greatest choreography in the world, you can have super music, but if your delivery is poor, you're useless. If the dancer doesn't know what you're saying, then it doesn't matter if you're the greatest person in the world, even if your name is Lee Common and they can't hear you. Okay? On the choreography part of it, again, I've got to come back to the part where if the caller doesn't dance the stuff, and I mean dance it well, then it's impossible. How can you possibly call a good dance at that level? That's the strongest point, I think, on this whole thing. And you must know what calls or combination of calls cause problems. If you put two or three things together and you notice the floor shake in your home club, then obviously the same thing's going to happen when you go out to the different area clubs. So you try and either shy away from those if you have a weak floor, or help them. You've got to cue heavier, you have to explain things to them. And the dancers, they appreciate the help that you're giving them. Cueing, it's kind of a yes and no situation on that. If you over-cue, you're going to have the stronger dancer doing everything you said twice. And especially if you're a total sight caller, you're in a real mess. Half the floor has done your cues and the call, and the other half has just done the call, and they're all waiting, and they're all at 90 degrees to each other. So what are you supposed to do then? Think of a good gimmick and get them to square up fast. Either that or call a C4 call and say, darn, you didn't know that, that's too bad, and square them back up and get yourself out of the hole quickly. There's another thing in here. Are you going to write choreography or cite it? That's a good answer, yes. That's definitely what I say. Both are a very necessary part. Personally, I lean a little heavier to the reading part, mainly because that's what I learned first. I didn't know there was this cite stuff. I just wrote it down. I was a dancer. And I thought, hey, this is kind of interesting. I've learned to do both, and I think both are very necessary things. You cannot have one without the other. By writing, I don't mean reading everything off a piece of paper like this, holding it up to your nose and you can't see the dancers. It takes a skill to read. You have to be able to watch the floor, judge the floor, and read your choreography. On top of that, we're paid to be good. If it's an off, if it's an off night, we have absolutely no program set down. You walk into the hall, you call for your 2.5 hours. It's a blah dance, because you're feeling blah. If you have a few ideas written down, you have your program set out in front of you, how can you go wrong? Sure, maybe you don't find your corner every time, but the people out there understand that. They are human, too. Homework, I think, is a big part of our job. More so, too late after parties, more so than the mainstream and plus. Those people are impressed by different things. Very rarely are they really impressed by our outstanding wit and choreography. They prefer to be able to dance, do these things, and have a good time. The advanced dancer, by this time, has started to change a little. They want a little bit more. So we have to adjust our choreography. Therefore, homework is needed. You have to push your checkers around, find different things, different ideas, all this sort of thing. Now, getting into the music part, this is another part, I think, of programming. We have, of course, patter records and singing call records still at the advanced level. There's a need for both. On your patter records, you have the melodic type, the singing call type. I prefer to use those mainly because they just don't make patter records in my range. I don't think many people have that problem, of course, because you're all basically men.
Basically.
That was not written down here. Okay, by using singing call records, let's give you an example. I use Sweet Fantasy, Chinatown, things like that. Now, you have to be very aware of the floor. Are you going to do the first tip and you want them to dance this all smoothly? Okay, that's when you can use your singing call as a pattern. Put it on, let them go, they'll dance a lot smoother. But when it comes to a workshop and you put on Chinatown, they have the tendency to want to dance the stuff and get right into it. They won't hold still until you tell them what you're workshopping. So you have to be careful on where you use this type of music. If you pick something with a very heavy beat for a workshop, I think you'll find this is far more use to you because they're paying more attention. All they hear is this boom, boom, boom in the back of their head rather than singing the melody all over the floor on you. And instead of listening to you, they're singing. The psychological effect of music, this is all part of it too. You put on a nice, smooth-flowing record, which I think at Advanced it's one of the important things. We have to be able to make them dance. This is one of the faults that they say, don't go into Advanced and Challenge. It doesn't dance. They have no fun. They're straight-faced. They must be having a terrible time out there. Well, even a C3 floor, given a good record, good choreography, good delivery, it's danceable. Go to some of the challenge conventions. I admit they will have a long puss on them until they get to the right and left grands. And then kind of all hell breaks loose. You hear the charge, the right and left grand. Those things are very important to them. They've worked so hard for that sequence. They finally get a release on the right and left grand. So you will notice, sure, they're straight-faced. But again, that's up to you, how you handle the situation. Increase in volume. When you get close to things like your corner, the right and left grand, you're building suspense in the dancer. You could have the most crummy piece of choreography. You start off by saying to them, now this is going to be hard. So right away the floor goes quiet, they're tense. You give them a whole bunch of mainstream, two advanced calls, and you hit your mic or your volume on the right and left grand, and the floor the roof comes off. And it's little tricks like that that I think really help, especially at Advanced. You're working harder to put excitement into the floor. Some places you go to, you'll find that your choreography, the harder it is, the more they like it. Now, that's very rare, I will admit. Very few places you go to, this happens. But if you learn to use what you've got on the floor, plus what you've got in your head, what you've written down, you can lift the floor very easily just by little things that really have nothing to do with strictly Advanced. It's the same at every level. Trying to mesh special effects on your record, if you worked with them, and you know something like Rosalie's Boat, where there's a section in there and there's a heavy, heavy boom, boom type beat. If you hit, say, a chain reaction at the same time, you know it's coming. That excites your dancer. The same thing happens there. They smooth it all out. They dance with the music. The age group of each area you go into, I think that has an awful lot to do with, again, the music, the way we use it, timing. If you go into an area, actually in this area itself, Phoenix Mesa area, there's a lot of retired people. You can't go in, crank the speed up to 48 and expect them still to be alive at the end of the tip, because these people are elderly, so you back it down, adjust to your group. If you have a younger group, you can crank the speed up. You also have to be more careful with the type of music that you choose for each group. Okay, the most important part, delivery. That includes timing and music, timing, choreography, timing, the ability to read and sight, timing and judgment, timing and knowing your choreography, which comes back to the note service again. If you take somebody's notes, put it in front of your nose and read it without pushing your checkers through, how can you possibly know what's going to happen on that floor? You have to wait until they've executed the calls, and then hopefully you're going to have enough time to get that in quick before they stand too long to tell them what the next one is. So if you don't prepare your own choreography, then you're going to have very little dancer success and also caller success. With the delivery, I think personality, skill, and talent all come under that same heading. If you have a crummy personality, it comes across to the dancers and you have to adjust. You have to try and change it. Even if it's the worst awful night of the year, you feel terrible, your head is out to here because it's been a late after party, you have to get up and smile and tell them what a good time everybody's having. That's sometimes a little hard to do, but if you're lacking in one or more of these things, then you should find out what it is. Do a self-analysis, ask your own friends. It's going to hurt sometimes. They're going to say, well, and give you a list of things that you should change. I think there's a lot of things like gimmicks that you can use, but if you spend the whole night at an advanced dance using little gimmicks, you probably aren't going to be asked back again. You have to be very careful and limit them. They're a very useful tool. You can excite the floor with them. You can lift it. Little things like on the wheel through, they clap hands. The plus dancer really doesn't use a lot of return. Things like track two, sure, they toot on them, do things like that. When you get into advanced, again, there's more things that you add. Clapping on the wheel through. There are some that I personally use that we won't get into, that some others could not use. You have to be careful. Again, the sex of the caller does change the implication of what you use with the floor. Singing calls, things like behind closed doors. When she lets her hair hang down, that sounds really great with me saying that. It sounds worse when I say when he lets his hair hang down. You have to be careful. Pick things out that suit your personality and your sex. Some fellas like to use some of the more suggestive singing calls. Be careful the area that you use them in. It doesn't make any difference whether you're advanced, challenge, or mainstream. You have to be careful, because if you offend one person on that floor, that's it. You're in trouble. The terminology that you use. Little things like, would you like to reconsider? You're talking to one of the squares on the floor. They've just blown a flutter wheel at advanced because you had 4 boys in the middle doing it. If you say, oh, would you like to reconsider how you did that? You're not using any names. Half the floor usually thinks you're talking to them. So they back it up, redo it again, and there's a good feeling on the floor because you're waiting for them. You're giving a little bit of a head start on things. And they know they've made dumb mistakes on things like that. When it comes to something hard, that's what you're there for, the dance of success. You're trying to help them out. Again, the ability of the floor. It's all up to you, your judgment. I don't think that, as callers, we're being paid to make these people dance, to give them a good dance. Whether they're the worst, awful advanced dancers you ever called to in your life, you still have to give them an advanced dance. Whether it be soft, whether it's a hard, your judgment counts. We can't criticize the dancers in the area. It's not their fault. If the caller doesn't have the ability to teach any harder than what he's done, then that's what we have to go into this area and give the dancers that type of dance. It's no use saying, these people can't dance worth whatever. Beans, okay. We're still there to make them smile and have a good time. We shouldn't, behind their back, say, what a bunch of crummy dancers. I wonder who calls in this area. And then proceed to go around the floor and tell them that. And that does happen. Even if we're saying it under our breath quietly to somebody else, somebody hears it. So I'd be very careful. And another thing on the floor, I personally would not use people's names to tell them to turn around, do this, that, and the next thing. Because again, all you need to do is something, like psst, does wonders. The whole floor looks at you because they think they're all the ones that you're talking to. And the other hand is, the poor guy that's out there that is falling all over the place, it gives him a little bit of an advantage. Nobody notices it's him that went wrong because they all turn around. What may be successful for one caller will not be for another. Choose the things you say, the things you do very carefully, and watch the area you're in. I think maybe the last line to all this is, you're there to help the dancer succeed. Whether it's soft advanced or hard advanced, doesn't make any difference. Okay?
Thank you, Ann. Okay, very nice. And we would tell you that for those who do not know Dave or Ann, there are tremendous credentials for both of them for being on this panel. And we won't toot their horns and embarrass anybody or everybody, but we will tell you that they do belong here very much so. Well, not everybody knows Ann yet. I think that's changing very rapidly as she travels through the country, and we think it's a delight to have a lady caller who handles herself so well and handles the material, and it's a change, you know, and it's not a novelty change, it's a change because it's somebody who is very, very competent at what she does, and she's made a place for herself in the activity, and I think that's super. I'd like to see more ladies do it. I've always contended they're smarter than we are. So long as we keep cutting our records the way we do, they can be smarter, but we can also just keep them in check. You know, we don't want them to overrun us, you know, but I can get away with it. I invited Ann to be on this panel. Can't get away with it, huh, Ann? Okay. All right, let's go on just a little bit here, and then I want to open up something that I think you may not quite expect this morning, because I just thought of it. You know that our theme is this weekend. Your music is our greatest ally, and we've all been trying to tie into that as much as possible in the comments that we've been making about choreography. I'm going to touch very quickly on the part that singing calls play in advanced level, because I suspect that we have people in this room who do no singing calls at their advanced dances. Some do them every tip, others will do the middle road of 2 to 3 during the evening. It depends on where your advanced dancers have come from in many instances. Historically, there was a time frame, and this is a personal opinion, I have no evidence to this effect, but from the background that we've seen, when we first had advanced and challenge beginning, the callers who were most proficient, in fact genius if you will, at that time, were not necessarily the greatest singers that have ever been in this business. And they knew that. That was part of the reason they took that direction. And they were aware of it. They weren't kidding anybody, including themselves. Right? And they would attempt for the sake of the dancers at that time. And the dancers at that time would say, and I think mostly in compassion, we don't need that. Man, we're here for the choreography. You know, don't worry about it. We don't need those singing calls. And it slowly, very steadily began to disappear. Oh, you don't need them? Good. Then I won't try to do 6. I'll do 1. Right? It didn't take long to go to that. Now, as, again, the activity has grown and more callers have come in, many of them singing callers, and as more and more dancers have come from the ranks of mainstream plus club level into the activity who say, but I like singing calls. Or callers who say, I like doing singing calls. They've started to adjust and bring more and more in. We're seeing a lot more of that. But it's important that you keep advanced choreography a part of your singing calls. There's some reason for it. It gives the dancers a sense of polish. It gives them a feeling of competence when they can go through right in time to the music, no stop and go and wait and look and check and just dance the material. As somebody once said, if you still want the wind in your hair and the grit in your eye, you know, put on a singing call. Maybe that's true, but it's something that the dancers feel good about doing. There is a certain joy associated with dance. I mean, the choreography is not the do-all, be-all, but certainly if we're looking at advanced level, it has a place in the singing calls as well. And sometimes people say to me, well, yeah, but the singing call is supposed to be the relaxer. Fine, but it can be the relaxer in terms of the choreography and still be advanced level. Right? Even as long as you don't get too off the wall. And you can make it as hard or as easy as you want. Relaxing also is a relative term. What will allow a dancer who is a solid A1 dancer, for example, to function comfortably, relaxed form in the square, may be much beyond what a plus dancer could do. By the same token, you can increase the difficulty of that. Now, one rule of thumb that I've found is that if I'm calling an A2 dance and the floor is fairly soft, a couple of things that I will do. I will tend to use A1 calls in my singing patterns rather than A2 calls in some instances for a good portion of the evening. Right? And I do not tend to stack a great many advanced calls, whether it be A1 or A2, in my singing call patterns. Because they've got to do it right to the beat of the music. Right? If the call takes 8 beats, that's how many they get. And let's go on. And that makes it a little bit tougher. So I watch for that. I also watch for the frequency with which advanced calls appear within a particular pattern at the singing call. program. Now, I've got a couple of examples, and I'm not going to read them all. We had a handout for you with these on it. It's in Chicago somewhere with one of my bags. So what we'll do is just go over with you a little bit of what we had. On an A1 situation of something that might be considered softer, right, we'll do something such as heads wheel through, circle to a line, touch a quarter, and here comes the A1 call, split transfer the column.
That's the second one so far.
Yeah, wheel through would be one, or you could do it as a lead right, Jay. You know, either way. All right.
Square change.
Thank you. They circle the line, touch a quarter, split transfer the column. Boys run, slide through, swing through, box and that square through 3. All right. Now, that is not a complex choreographic pattern. It does not make them crazy. It builds a little confidence, and they can ease into that. Right. Might be the type of thing in an A1 I'd want to use as an opener, and especially if I had worked the split transfer in the actual pattern and the choreography. Now, we all look for using little resolutions that are different. We have a thing here with heads promenade half, square through 4, all curly crossed lines facing out. So we have our A1 call with curly cross, wheel and spread, star through. We have a completed double pass through position at that point, and track 2, swing the corner and promenade. Only one A1 call in the whole sequence. Excuse me. I think I caught that from Ann. And it's a situation that is not too far reaching, but it's a little different, different setup, and you're employing an A1 call. Right? But you can go further and further afield depending on the floor and how much you want to do. Think about this one, follow as much in your mind as if you can. If we had the heads do a pass out and roll, split square through 3. We now have lines facing out, turn and deal, double pass through, track 2, recycle and swing. That's tough as an A1 sequence to ask them to do the heads pass out, roll, split square through, right, 3/4 to a turn and deal. You are really starting to begin to make them reach and stack, and that gets a little bit harder. So, you know, we've added more of the A1 calls in, and we've put them together where possible, right, and we've made them reach a little bit further. The same thing holds true as you move along further and further into the levels, depending on how difficult you want to get. It is nice, particularly when the floor is moving well, to be able to set up a call action so that the dancers can resolve using a call from within the level right at the resolution point. We have a head slide through, pass through, swing through 1.5, in roll, circulate, AC-doocy, explode, touch a quarter to a split transfer the column, swing the corner and promenade. There's a lot of meat. They can do that, but they need help, and you need to work through with them, and they need to be understanding about doing stacked calls. Right? But that sequence is something that, you know, when they hit that swing the corner, they know they've done something. They really know they've been somewhere. That's not a relaxed sequence for a standard A2 floor that we're finding, you know. Again, if you're doing some of those ideas, though, in the hash, they can do it a little bit more and they feel more confident about it.
John?
Yes?
2 aspects of that.
Go ahead.
John, there's 2 aspects to stacked. The first one is density in X number of calls, and the second one is how quick do you deliver them.
Okay, well,
which do you refer to?
All right. I refer to both. Number one, in the singing call, the rate at which you deliver is going to be predetermined by your music. Right? And, you know, well, the calls take X number of beats, right? You know, and then there's your music timing. Right? Now, the other, of course, is one call behind another from within the same level. Right? For example, switch the wave, turn and deal, pass and roll, right? All 3 being advanced calls, one behind another. That's primarily what we're talking about when we refer to stacking. As far as speed of stacking, that's a variety of things. It's your floor. How well is your floor moving and reacting? How much time do they need? Is it a pattern? Is it a singing call?
Singers. In singers, a lot of times you stack the calls so you can sing the words of the top song.
There is a limit to that. Right. There is a limit to whether or not you can stack a singing call series in order to allow you time to sing words. That's not it. You know, the singing call, the people there involved in the music and the emotional aspects that that particular piece of music is presenting, and that you're helping to present with it, and you do not sacrifice their danceability or make them race or panic them just in order to be able to sing words. I have two ideas here for you that you might want to consider, and I would warn you on both of these. If you're looking for something that's a little more far-reaching, be careful. These will make them reach, but if you choose to play with these at all, we have one here with the head star through and spread as couples pass the ocean. And then you say, we won't tell anybody that we started a singing call over at our advanced club, but square your sets and let me show you how this is going to go. Because a lot of them will get stunned right there. But again, head star through and spread, there's your line. As couples pass the ocean, each side crossfire. All 8 circulate. Boys run, turn and deal. Square through 3, trade by, swing and promenade. If they do that for you real smooth, they're cooking. Tough. And that's the whole point. You can make it as difficult as you choose and as you have good judgment to make it for the floor. I do not propose that you make it difficult for the sake of difficulty. Right? You're looking for differences and ideas, and again, as we often said, one level below. But again, you're working within the basics of the activity. If I do a heads wheel through, touch a quarter, split circulate, well, we're all in fine shape, lock it, which gives me the tidal wave, and then single wheel and wheel through.
Isn't it supposed to be choreographically smooth too, John?
The body flow is exactly right on those, Jay. The body flow, you go back and look at the body flow. Right roll to an ocean wave, scoot chain through, swing and promenade. Okay, this type of stuff is very difficult. That is not the kind of thing you would do with most floors. And my point is that you have that whole realm without getting involved in experimentals, of polishing your dancers and working within that kind of a choreographic approach. The dancers have got to win. This is something Ann was pointing out, and it's true. Right? You want them to win, but you want them to feel good about themselves while they're winning. Right? That sense of winning doesn't simply mean that they got through everything. It means that they felt good about having gotten through everything, because if it's all star through, dive through, pass through all night long, they danced it all, but it wasn't necessarily a winning sensation. But the dancers have got to be the long-term winner. Right? And I think that using the music and using the advanced choreography within the music is important. You can temper it by the number of advanced calls you include in the sequence, by their proximity to one another. Is one advanced call immediately following another, etc. Now, that's really all that I was going to say on the singing call portion. We have a couple of questions. I'll get to those real quick, and then I want to ask you I need just a couple minutes of your time for one very quick thing. I want some feedback from you. But yes, sir, you had a question. Go ahead. You want to step up to the mic? Maybe you had a comment, not a question, but no.
Well, both. Jim Diffie from Nevada City, California. I got involved. I wish you had about 4 hours for this, really.
I do too.
Yeah. I got involved in the advanced program a few years ago, and because of attitudes of dancers and callers, I got out of it. About 3 years ago, they convinced me to start again because we live in an area where there's only 5,000 people, and I'm the only guy there, and that presents problems. I have a million questions, naturally, but we don't have time. We've had Bill Davis and Bill Kramer both up to call for us, and they can tell you that we're not doing too bad. You mentioned something here in the choreography, even though it was singing calls, I'm sure Patter would follow suit, where you had most of the people moving all the time. You were using advanced calls, advanced terminology and whatnot. Now, we had a festival last October wherein one of the callers departed from that and got into this where you have these people do this, these people do that, and everybody else is standing around waiting. And the mood of our dance changed. And we had a good weekend going until then, and people started complaining to me. Now, these are good dancers. Okay. There's some of your dancers. There were a lot of people there from all over the country. And I'd like to know, at what point do you consider that bad taste? Okay. Like I say, I have a million questions. But
okay, well, again, join us for breakfast if you can, and we'll spend as much time with you as we can. To answer that question, the activity, or the nature of the activity you're referring to, I call composite calling. Boys do this, girls do that, centers do this, ends do that, outsides do so-and-so, while the other people do this, this, and this. Now, you other people on the outside, you come back and do, right, and I refer to that as composite calling. You're piecing, you're taking bits and pieces and putting it together. That is a style. Right? And no matter how fast it's delivered, there are people going to be waiting at some point in time. I don't care how fast the music is or how fast it's delivered. But it has a choreographic value in terms of being able to create a lot of different formations, different ideas, seeing different things take place on the floor. Some callers have gone to that as their primary style. Right? They use it to great advantage. A lot of dancers are very successful dancing that way because it gives them time to stop, find out where they are, look around, get a handhold on what's happening, and then, oh, it's my turn again, here I go. I think a little bit of composite calling is fine. I think it should not be the primary thing because it does interrupt flow and dance. I think the dancers do want to dance. They do want to move to music. Right? It is a choreographic tool. I don't think it should be the only tool. I think it should just be one of them. I don't feel it's necessarily in bad taste. It just happens that the caller you elected to use happens to use that a great deal. Whoever he is, and I don't know, I don't want to know. The point is that he has probably been very successful with this style. And we all use what works for us. Some of the dancers probably went out of there feeling like this was one of the greatest callers they'd ever danced to. Others, said, gee, why is it I am so tired from having stood around waiting? And so I don't think you can do much in a situation like that except recognize it. If you feel the majority of the dancers that are attending your festival are not comfortable with that type, then you don't hire that type of caller. And that's just simply a programming thing, but it's part of the activity and it's going to exist. Let me do one thing, and I'll be glad to talk with you in between. We are out of time, and I know you want to get to breakfast. A couple of things. First, how about a nice hand for Dave and Ann? Thank you very much. Appreciate you being here. We very much appreciate all of you coming out to support us this morning, and I want one piece of feedback from you. We tied in as tightly as we could to use of music being our greatest ally and tried to keep that in the forefront about timing and flow and so on, and that was at the request of committee. I had a distinct feeling that many of you, don't leave, Jay, many of you were in this room because you wanted more choreographic content on, whether it be resolutions, whether it be setups, get-outs, equivalents, zeros, I don't know, but I just had that feeling, and I want to know how many of you would have preferred, and you're not going to hurt our feelings, because we've done as at the direction of the board, is how we've presented to you, right, and gone as far afield as we could get away with. But I want to make sure that we're offering what you want, and especially for in future years like next year. So tell me, is that more what you had in mind this morning? Did you have more of the choreographic meat thing? I'd like to see some hands one way or the other, if that's what you really expected. Okay. All righty. That's fine. The idea being, our feedback on that being that I think that we may not always choose to be married to the convention theme if it is specifically a choreographic session, and that would be the type of response I would give. Yes?
I don't think it's so much which we would prefer, because I thoroughly enjoyed what you guys presented this morning. I think it's just a matter of what we expected.
What you expected?
The name of the session.
Okay.
They call it a choreography session. We expected choreography.
So did we, and they said, but keep it as close to our theme as you can. Right. So I will take that back with that in mind, and hopefully we can do an improved job on delivering what you expect at Baltimore. Thank you again very much. We appreciate it.